Hi again, here we are to continue talking about React and Redux. And in our last video, we changed our whole system. So we added a new action here called new counter. Counters will now have a name and a value, right? So we went into our reducer and we set that up. So when you create a new counter, it'll look like this. It'll have a name property and a value property, right? And the name will come from the form, right? So we'll pass it in here to the action creator, and that'll get passed down through the payload to the reducer, okay? And we fixed some of our older components which now need to understand that the value isn't just a number, it's an object with a name and a value, right? So let's try and set up our create counter component here so that we can actually create a new counter, right? So what we'll do is we'll cover the React controlled component pattern, they call it, right? So I'm going to add a constructor function here that will take in props in case we decide to pass props to this component, and then if we take in props, we got to call super with props. And then what we'll do is we'll add state to the component. Okay, so it's important for us to follow this pattern because this is how React works with form elements, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to make state, and this will be name, and the default value will be the empty string. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie this piece of this local state or component state, which is different from the application state. So this has nothing to do with the Redux store. It's just stored inside this component or an instance of this component, right? So we're going to use this to set the value on the input, and when the input changes or when you type something into the input, we'll set the value on state here, and then that'll update the value displayed in the component, right? Or in the input field. So what we're going to do first is we're going to say value. So this is like what the component displays. And we want to display this .state name. Okay, and then next, what we want to do is on change, right? So when this component changes, we're going to get the event object. We put in an anonymous function here, and when we get the event object, we're going to call this .set state, and we'll generate a new piece of state for name, right? So we'll generate a new value for name, and that will come from e.target.value. So this will come from the value that's currently in the input field, right? So let's save that and give it a quick test and see if it works. It should just look like it did before. I should be able to type anything into this field, right? And now what we'll want to do is we'll want to connect this component to our Redux store, okay? So what we're going to do down here is we're going to add, this component doesn't need map state to props because it's not going to display any piece of state. But what it is going to do is it's going to map dispatch to props. So what we'll do is we'll import our action creator called new counter from, and I guess we're here in components, so we got to go up a folder and then find actions, right? So we'll go /actions/ right? So now we got new counter here. Oops. And then what we want to do is we want to map this to, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a comment there so I can scroll this up a little higher, right? And we'll want to use map this or to dispatch, right? So we'll say const map state to dispatch. And if you remember the map state to dispatch, all it does is return an object that has the functions on it that are the action creators, right? So, or the action creators that you want to map to the props on your component. And so this is the only one that I want to map, so I'll just put it in here, okay? And now we need to call connect with export default. So what we'll do is we'll, I'm going to cut the name out of here. We'll call connect, and I forget if you can put the underscore there because I don't have anything to put here. So I'll do that, and then I'll say map state to dispatch here. And actually, we're just going to call that because we just want to take this object and put it in here. So actually, you know, we could actually just take this object and put it there, you know, if that's even easier, right? Maybe we'll just do this. We'll just put new counter here like that, and then we can just get rid of this, right? So that's really all that that function is doing, is it's just returning the new counter, right? And then what we'll do is we'll put, oops, shoot, I forgot I had this name create counter on the clipboard, right? So let's put that in here. So remember the connect method, oh, I guess we can't put this here. What if we don't map that? What if can we put undefined? Oh, I guess that's okay, right? Yeah, we don't have this anyway, so that's okay. And I think it's okay not to map dispatch. Like you don't, you know, if this component's not using it, we don't need it, right? So anyway, so we've got this, and now we need to use it. So we'll create a new counter by clicking the create button. So I'm going to go up here to on click, and we've mapped the new counter action creator to props. So here we can call it with this dot props dot new counter. And actually, you know, that was kind of interesting. It shows me new counter requires a name, right? Just as a reminder. And then we'll include the name here. So our name is going to come from this dot state dot name. That's like another long line. Maybe I'll add a curly bracket there and make this kind of write out the whole function like that, so it's a little easier to read, right? So yeah, so we took new counter, mapped it to dispatch, second parameter. We curried the create counter method, right? So with what was returned from connect. And then now we have access to this method on props, but it's not the original method. It's been connected to the dispatcher, right? To the Redux store. So when we call it here, it will dispatch this value to the action creator. Let's like kind of go over the flow, right? So we kind of connected this to our component through props. If you click on this now, it's going to call the method here, and you are going to pass in the name. So it will return this object here, but it's actually, since it's been passed through the connect method, it doesn't return the object here. Instead, it sends the object to the dispatcher. So if we look at the counter dispatcher, you know, that action that we just created from the new counter action creator is going to be this action here. And then we're going to look at the type and flow through the switch case, right? So this action.type should be new counter, and then we should do this thing here where we add a new counter to the list. Let's see if I got that correct there. Let's refresh this and say counter A. Oh, I got an error. Darn. Let's see. Let's go to the inspector here. And what do I got here? Each child must have a key prop. Oh, I forgot about that one. I should have included somebody probably noticed that I missed that, right? Let's go here and debug this, right? So I'll click there. What do I got here? Uncaught violation. Wait, objects are not valid as a React child. Oh, I'm probably not mapping my counters correctly. So we got to go look at counters, right? So let's go back to counters here. And here, we're getting an array of counters, but we can't map them directly to values, right? So we actually have to turn these into you know, this value is actually a counter right here, and we have to put the value here. So let's fix this, right? I forgot about this component, right? Anyway, this is pretty good. So we got pretty far. So we're mapping our counters here. If we're going to map through our counters, this is going to be a counter object, and we're going to return a counter.value here, and maybe underneath this we'll put the name of that counter. And so we can say, you know, counter dot name, and maybe that will work. Let's see. Let's put a name in here, hello. Oh, so there's the hello counter, and then we can add stuff to it, and max is working. Now we should just do a little validation on max. So if there's no values, then we'll just print a 0 or something there, right? Let's make another counter here, call it world, create, oh, there's the world counter, right? Anyway, so that was a pretty good session there. I think we got a lot done. Thanks for watching, and we'll continue with this, and I got a few other things that we can do with this, right? So this is good practice too, to go through the whole process again, from actions through reducers, and following that through with map state to props and map dispatch to props, right? So anyway, thanks for watching, and